Hey everybody, this is Dr. Lorenzo Neal. Before I go any further, I want to first of all thank you so much for thinking out Robert to check out my channel. I know it's been a minute since I posted, but we're doing better, getting a little more consistent. But before I go any further, I do want to invite you, if you haven't done so, click the like button, click the subscribe button, and the bell for notifications when we make new videos or upload new videos. We appreciate you so much. So, if you have not heard, and I'm sure you may have, on yesterday, President Joe Biden signed into law the Juneteenth Independence Day holiday. That's the Juneteenth Independence Day federal holiday. He did that after the measure passed overwhelmingly in the House and the Senate. The Juneteenth bill was introduced by Texas Representative Sheila Jackson Lee and Texas Senator Cornyn. I can't remember his first name. They introduced the bill, and of course, it's a great bill. It's a wonderful bill. Those of you who have no idea about what Juneteenth is the recognized day of independence for most black folk. It's the day that the news got to slaves in Galveston area of Texas, that they had been liberated, emancipated from slavery. And on June 19th every year, we have been celebrating this, observing this unofficially. And now that it is a federal law, that means federal workers will be off on that day. That's another day for a whole lot of people to celebrate. You're going to have June 19th and then turn around and have July 4th. It don't get much better than that. But anyway, it did pass, and President Biden signed it into law on yesterday, making it official. And this harkens back for me memories of when the MLK Day was made into law by President Reagan, and a celebration that went forth, and how we had Stevie Wonder's song Happy Birthday, and now that's a standard song for birthday parties. I digress. This is a great step for the country in reconciling the history that it has with American descendants of slaves, the ADOS community. It's a great way of saying that the nation is putting forth effort. Well, let me say not the nation. Legislators, our federal legislators are putting forth the efforts to recognize the things that need to take place. And of course, we do realize a great catalyst for this was the murder of George Floyd in May of 2020, and a number of other incidents that also happened during that year. But I had a few questions, and I'd like to get your insights on some of these things too. First of all, what does it really mean for black people? What does this Juneteenth Independence Day holiday mean for black people? Well, first, it means another day off. I know you don't like to say it, but most of us, when we observe MLK, we're not really observing MLK, the person. We're observing MLK, the holiday, the fact that we get a day off. And I remember when I was coming up in school, it was a choice. And most school districts and most municipalities and a whole lot of states did not, even after it was passed in law, did not really observe it. And even I think in some places they observe counter observations. They're not going to observe Martin Luther King Day. They're going to observe Robert E. Lee Day. They're going to observe something, and I'm mistaken. So if I'm mistaken, I'm sorry. But they're not really observing Martin Luther King Day. It's just a day off for a lot of black people. While we do, I know when I was growing up doing the parades, that was a big thing. But now, it's not as cherished or as valued in the black community as it was when it passed nearly 40 years ago. And so, and for Juneteenth, for most people, Juneteenth was always like Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa and Juneteenth were fringe observations in the black community. A lot of black people had no idea of what Juneteenth was until last year. And a lot of people had no relation to the idea of slaves receiving information until last year. And so it's like saying this is something we could really be proud of, but reality is most people won't be proud of. It'll be another day off. But for real, it's an opportunity for black people to, especially descendants of slaves, American descendants of slaves, to come to grips with the reality of their heritage. And by heritage, I mean we should take this opportunity. This is what I think should be done for Juneteenth. I think families should sit down and do a family genealogy. You know, go through your history. Go through, if it's possible, try to find out, because there's so many single families, single mother homes. Try to connect with your history. Who is your grandparents? Who are your great grandparents? Who are your great great grandparents? What is your family's origins? Where is your family home site? Where, I hear it all the time. People really don't know where their family came from. They know they came from Mississippi. They may know they came from Alabama. They may know they came from Texas or Louisiana, but they're not specifically sure, or they've never even been there. This should be an opportunity for black people to really connect with their heritage, learn their roots, and amplify the voice of the ancestors, so that this reality of freedom and liberation can really flow and be empowering, right? That's the first thing I suggest. The other thing I think it should mean to black people is the reality that we do have a heritage. We do have something meaningful that we can connect with, and I think about Frederick Douglass's speech. What to the black is the 4th of July. What to the Negro is the 4th of July. And I've done versions of that. I've recited parts of that on a number of occasions. And now we could say the 4th of July doesn't mean anything to us. June 19th is our day of independence. And I know it may not sit well with some lesser marinated people. The fact that this is a holiday observing and recognizing the abolishment of slavery in America. It may not settle well with some people, but it is a good step toward racial reconciliation and healing, especially in the midst of this craziness of critical race theory and how it's some people feel is being imposed upon our country and our education system and our churches and things of that nature. So we don't need to be reactionary to this. And I'm praying that my white brothers and sisters don't become reactionary because they passed this. Mind you now, this passed overwhelmingly in both chambers of Congress, unanimously in the Senate, and only 14 dissenters in the House. This is a great thing to recognize for America's history. What does it mean for our white or lesser melanated, not marinated, lesser melanated people? Well, it means that we are a step forward in observing what e pluribus unum really means, or unum, or how you want to say it, out of many one. We've gotten so far from that concept over the last several decades, and I think it's a good step for us to get back to that. I'm working on a book, and one of the chapters in the book talks about regressive nostalgia. And we're in that period where I believe we're trying so hard to reset not just the civil rights movement, but to reset an entire sense of identity as a country. Who are we really? What is America like really? We know we are so flawed. We know we were imperialistic in some ways. We know all of this, but what are we really like now? What is the soul of America right now? And I think this is a great way for all of us, American descendants of slaves and non descendants of slaves, black and white, to view America in a different way. The other thing I think is really critical that I believe that we really need to be careful is how are we celebrating? How are we going to celebrate this? Well, for black folk, it's another barbecue. It's another way for us to get together and celebrate, to party, to do what we do, baby. That is another way for us to do. That's all we do. Summer, like Will Smith said, summertime. It's time for us to get up and do what we do. But it's a great way for those persons who are not familiar with the holiday at all to learn the depths of the black cultural community. How we're not really monolithic as people perceive us to be, and how we use moments of hardship in our history as a means of celebration. We do it every week in church. We do it at weddings when we jump the broom. We take those bits of our heritage, our history, that helps shape who we are culturally, and the breadth of that culture we call black culture, to help us empower everybody else, and so celebrating it we don't need white people celebrating in a patronizing manner. But what we do need is for white people to appreciate the fact that we now have something to identify with. We do know that some of this is pandering. Some of this, and this is just the reality, you don't have to agree with it or not, but some of this is just for white legislators and some white people to say, we're doing this for you. You deserve it. It's like patting on the back. Look how good we are to you. We're giving you this holiday. Look how benevolent we are to you. See what we're doing for you? So don't ask for anything else. Look, we've given you 2 federal holidays. You have MLK and now you have Juneteenth. That's 2 federal holidays. You should be happy. No. We should not. I know it's a bit cynical to see it from that perspective, but that's the reality of it. We should, as black folk, we should be happy that we got this holiday. That's great, but we still need to demand more. What does that demand look like? It's so much. There's a whole lot that we could talk about, that we could demand. Some are still demanding reparations. Some are still demanding, voter suppression be really exposed and done away with. And there's a lot. And so many people some people have many other things that they believe needs to be done. So we can't settle. You hear me, black folk? We can't settle. And we have to call to the carpet all those legislators, black and white, but more specifically black folk, black legislators at your state level and at the federal level. We need to say, all right, enough of following somebody else's agenda. Create the black agenda. I know Ice Cube talked about that, and he was ridiculed for it. But the reality is we need a black agenda, and we need our black legislators to really be serious. Not inclusive Stuff, not intersectional stuff. No, stuff's just for black folk, the black community, and non-welfare related. We don't need extra stuff. We don't need extra spending. We need initiatives that's going to really empower black communities. We need that from the federal dollars that's going to come in. If we're going to do spending, we're going to spend it. If we're going to be talking about infrastructure, the first place it needs to happen is in black communities. Across the railroad track, where MLK Road, Avenue, Boulevard, or Street is. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That's the first place we need the infrastructure. That's the first place we need to be able to have black businesses get access to real SBA loans, or SBA loans. And not just black immigrants. I'm not talking about black immigrants. I'm talking about American descendants of slaves, the ADOS community. And I know some of you may not be familiar with that. That's a whole different thing, but you may identify that whether you recognize it or not. And that's what we need to be saying. If we're going to be doing federal spending, and I'm not a proponent of federal spending, I'm more of a fiscal conservative, but if we're going to spend money, black folk, you need to voice up and say, if you're going to spend money, spend it here. We are a spending power block. We spend the trillions of dollars for you, for these companies. We're going to be all blinged out. We're going to be all weaved out. We're going to be all of this. But we still have food deserts in our communities. We still have poor schools in our communities. I'm talking about not just as far as books, but I'm talking about buildings also. We still have churches that are thriving, yet on the same street a church could be is 5 dilapidated houses. And I know I'm talking in my own house, on my own block. So we need to be demanding more. I'm glad for Juneteenth, Independence Day holiday. I'm glad. I'm going to be participating in some Juneteenth activities this weekend. I'm sure a lot of you will be. But let's put our mouth and our money and our power, collective power, together to really see the change that we want to see in our black communities. Okay? And put a greater demand on our legislators, not just to appease us with holidays that we may or may not fully observe. We'll be glad to get a day off. But let us appeal to them to help empower us. They tell us to pull ourselves up our own bootstrap. Well, black folk, it's time for us to do it. That's my own 2 cents. I appreciate you for listening. If you have a comment, I welcome you to leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I may have missed some information. I may have said something that could have been said better. Leave that there. But please do so courteously. And also, before you, if you listen all the way through, make sure that you smash that like button, smash that subscribe button if you have not done so, and the bell for notifications. And follow me on Patreon. Become a patron of mine on Patreon. All that information is there in the description and along with my website. I appreciate you so much. You guys take care. I'm out.